it was March 30th, we convinced him to come over to the house, and we were visiting. He was uber happy, manic euphoria. And he did stuff like saying how he understood what Jesus died for and what we as humans are supposed to do and the living experiences. He was weird. He had 2 different shoes on, 2 different kind of socks on. He looked like so disheveled. I said, would you go share this with a friend of mine? And so meanwhile, I'm calling my psychiatrist friend and go, hey, my son, something's wrong. I just tell him to come by 11 o'clock on Monday. So on Sunday, I called him. I got you an appointment. Here's the address, 11 o'clock. Just go chat and let's figure this thing out, you know? Well, I left that on his voicemail, and he shot himself on Sunday.
Welcome to the Good Grief, Good God show, hosted by Grammy nominee and Emmy award-winning hit songwriter of 15 top 10 songs, including 9 number ones, Brad Warren of the Warren Brothers. Join Brad during season 1 monthly on the first and third Tuesdays on your favorite audio platform or in video on YouTube for raw, honest conversation about surviving things that suck. For today's episode, Brad welcomes 8-time winner of Polestar's Third Coast Agent of the Year, CMA Touring Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, and booking agent for CAA and co-founder of CAA's Nashville office, John Huie. John and his wife, Dawn, lost their son, Ryan, 10 years ago, and they were huge anchors for Brad and Michelle after Sage's passing. In proper John Huey form, he and Dawn started the incredible Life After Loss program at Onsite for families who have suffered loss. You're about to discover that John's heart and faith are as big as his personality and achievements. I'm producer Matt Pivito. To learn more about today's guest, Brad, and the show, check the description where you'll also find clickable links to connect to the show on social media and to visit goodgriefgoodgodshow.com. Lastly, if you'd like to help support the show, hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a comment or a 5-star review. On the behalf of Brad's wife, Michelle, and segment producer and guest booker, Lisa Bolt, thank you for tuning in. The Good Grief, Good God show is brought to you in loving memory of Sage Michael Warren. And episode 15 is brought to you in loving memory of Ryan Scott Huey.
Playing hurt today, John Huey. Thank you for being here. You got a little cold.
A little head cold, but negative COVID.
I'm actually just kind of trying to sneeze and cough when I get in public just to give myself some room.
I think I don't have to get on an airplane anytime soon, I don't think.
You're not getting on an airplane?
Next time on a plane, going to London. My wife and I go 3 days early. We're going to take a train down to Amsterdam and get out of London. But
do you continue working some just so that you can do fun stuff?
I think I'm the number 1 user of the CAA suite at Bridgestone. You know, that's my parking spot in the Truist building right behind the Ryman is, you know, it's golden. So, yeah, it absolutely has.
Well, you own CAA, don't you?
No. Well, I wish, but.
I don't know. I mean, you do kind of look like Rob Light. You guys get there's definitely a CAA agent look.
Oh, really?
Ken Levican could work in there too.
Yeah.
Big guys.
Yeah.
Talking to your son Jason before we started this, and he works with e-ticks along with our friend Matt, and I'm like, is there a height requirement at e-ticks? Because you guys are like 6'4".
Well, look at the most powerful guy that we're, probably 1 or 2 is the most powerful guy in the business, Irving Azov, and he's
how big is
like
Irving?
Napoleon.
5'2"?
Yeah, he's not tall at all, but very tall in stature.
You did something before CAA, didn't you? Did you own your own thing? I mean, you were historically, I got in the business. I just got honored by the CMA, and it was for lifetime achievement, and it was a good time to reflect on everything. This award gave me an opportunity to do that because I did some interviews, and people started saying, "Well, how'd you get in the business?" So hopefully somebody was recording it. So I mean, did you grow up going, "I'm going to be a bookie"?
I was a Beatle nut. I had a Beatle wig, and I took my mom's ukulele, and I'd play air guitar. And when I was a little kid, and my first concert was August 18th, 1965, the Beatles at Atlanta Stadium. That was my first concert, and I never wanted to be a Beatle. I wanted to be one of the guys running with the Beatles. When I saw Hard Day's Night, I was kind of paying attention to who all was involved in the process of making it work. As a kid, I was 9 years old. So in high school, the last 2 years of high school, I booked all the prom day. I was treasurer student body my junior year and president student body my senior year, and I was in charge of setting up all the school dances. We actually had school dances back when I grew up. And I would know the local scene and was a pizza cook at the Omni downtown. It was right when Underground Atlanta opened up, and a guy who had hockey tickets for the Atlanta Flames right outside my booth. He told me he ran the Broadway. I said, great, pizza and beer's on me. So I comped him his pizza and beer, and I'd go down to the club, and they'd know me. I'd walk in, and I'd have to keep quiet because a couple times there were bands that I had that at a school dance, a high school dance that played in the club.
That knew you were in high school.
Yeah, I'm like, going, shh, don't say anything, you know. But and then when I went to college, I went to Davidson College in North Carolina. I joined the concert committee as a freshman, and then the last 2 years, I actually quit football and ran the concert committee for 2 years. And I always say my degree is sociology, but I basically majored in the student union. And so got to buy talent. Then I bought a lot from this little company called Paragon Agency in Macon, Georgia, which was home of Capricorn Records.
Kenny Chesney was on Capricorn Records.
That was the resurgence of it when it opened when Walden moved to Nashville.
It's an Atlanta-based company. I remember there was a band from Tampa that got a deal with Capricorn Records.
Yeah.
We were all freaking out because someone got signed, and then I stopped and went, "What's Capricorn Records?"
Right.
But I remember it was in Atlanta.
So went there. Ian Copeland was an agent who'd been there about a year. He moved from England, and his dad was one of the original founders of the CAA and was based in Lebanon. And his brother was Stuart Copeland, the drummer of the Police.
Oh yeah, Police, yeah.
And Miles was the manager and started IRS Records. So Ian was an agent there, and then at Paragon, it's because Ian, I said, why'd you move from England to Macon, Georgia? Why not New York or LA? Yeah. So everybody in LA and New York with suit and ties, and I like blue jeans, t-shirts, and smoke pot at lunch. So he could do that a little freer in Macon than he could in New York. And so he was there, and then a year later, it's long historical context of why what the changes happened in the business structure in Macon. But Ian decided to move to New York, start his own agency. He asked me to go with him, and I did. And it was called FBI, and he and I and a couple assistants started our business. And
who were you booking?
Within 3 years, at one point we had 1, 2, and 3 on the charts. We had Joan Jett, Go-Go's, and the Police.
Wow.
But it was mainly new wave stuff. While I was there, 5 years into it, I signed Amy Grant. And you don't have enough video, you don't have enough time on your hard drive for me to get into that story. So that's not why we're here.
I've talked about you and Amy Grant on this podcast, by the way. Okay. Just your story about that when she came to your house. A lot of things, but yeah. I barely know her in passing, but she's amazing. She's an
incredible human being. But once I signed Amy Grant, I had the Karina Christian, then I had Michael W., then I had Stephen Curtis Chapman, and Petra, and then Jars Clay, and then all of a sudden I had all these punk bands, and then I had all these Christian bands. And I was
Did you ever get them together to party and see what happens?
They were actually, there'd be more than that than you think. But since it was at the time a separate business, it was hard. And it still is in a lot of ways. Any specialty, if you have a jazz or blues or country.
It's funny how non-country your roots are, actually. You didn't start with George Strait.
Yeah. So, and that's a funny story too, how I got it. My first country client I worked with was Dwight Yoakam, and I just said, I don't know anything about country music. I just know how to book rock bands. He says, we're going to get along great. Just book me like a rock band.
Yeah.
I said, great, I can do that.
Yeah.
Funny thing on Dwight Yoakam, one of the first time I played Houston, booked him in Houston, Texas, I booked a show and it goes on sale, and then I get this madman calling me from Nashville, and I'm in LA at the time. And he's screaming at me, you dumb, and it's Ben Farrell. And he says, why did you put Dwight Yoakam the same night that George Strait's in Houston? I'm like going, who's George Strait? And I said, well, there's no
people. I booked it like a rock band.
I booked it like a rock band. I said, there's 8 million people in that town. And guess what? They both did well. They both sold out. So, I was vindicated, but, it took me a while to learn this system of country and how things function, operate.
Country music's like Baptist church. Bless your heart, shake your hand, quietly stab you in the back later, maybe.
Right.
But
Well, I always say that's the difference between LA and New York. So which do you prefer? I said I much prefer New York. I'd rather be stabbed in the chest than stabbed in the back.
Yeah, me too. Well, I got a fighting chance if the knife's coming right at me.
You see it coming.
Yeah.
But I had started my own company. I left FBI, started my company H1. Because I wasn't getting a lot of support and help nor hire for the Christian stuff. And it was like drinking out of a fire hose of just kind of getting, now I got all this stuff, I got to deal with it, and I had to deal with the other stuff. So I left, started my own company. Then I was in it for 2 years, and then ICM called me and said, "Hey, we love what you've done. You've been successful. Will you move out to?" And I moved out to LA to run our West Coast office or of contemporary office. And I just gotten married, just had my first child, started a new. It was just inundated, and I was just 30, so I was kind of like, wow, 5-year contract, security, making double what I was making. And I said, yeah, I'll try that. And my wife Dawn said, I said, what do you think about moving to California? She says, well, as long as we live at the beach and buy me a convertible, I'm in. And that's really what she said.
Hey,
I said, I got
like
that.
Fair deal.
Well, that's all I got. You gave me instruction. Guess what? I went and bought her a convertible, and we lived at the beach.
That's exactly what my wife would have said. That's perfect.
So then I went to ICM for 5 years, and country was starting to explode. That was a kind of interesting detour because the corporate structure, how they had it set up, didn't work really well. And then when country started blowing up, even ICM said, hey, what about going to Nashville and starting an office there? And meanwhile, CAA was flirting around with the idea too, and I jumped ship and joined Ron Baird, and we opened the first office of CAA outside of Los Angeles in '91, and now we have offices all over the world.
So I have a quote for anyone I have on the podcast. So your quote was Albert Einstein, which I think that's a big compliment there. That I give you Albert Einstein.
Yeah, probably a little off base.
Like Amy Mayo got a Hunter S. Thompson quote. So the quote is, there are only 2 ways to live your life. One is though nothing is a miracle, and the other is as though everything is a miracle. I feel like you live your life as though everything's a miracle. So tell us about Ryan.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, the interesting way Ryan decided to enter this world was I met my lovely bride. It was October '85. I hadn't known her 3 weeks, and she was pregnant. She was 23. I was 29. I was running a business, and we were successful. And, she's a New York City girl, 23 years old, just got out of college.
She's known you for a month.
Known me for less than a month.
Yeah, less than a month.
Like, you're nuts. And so Ryan came into this world July 26th of '86, and we started a family. Then we moved to LA and spent 5 years there before we moved to Nashville in '91. And what's funny is I got involved in a lot of charities from early in my early marriage years, and probably at one point was up to 7 or 8 different boards. And my line was, I don't want a wake-up call. So what's that? Well, so many people start charities after they lose a kid or, start a foundation. And, you almost go, God, were they baited into that happening because of the event? I said, why don't I go do all that stuff so that negative thing doesn't happen to me? And I don't know if it's the whole mystery of time in heaven. When you say eternity, it doesn't mean endless time. It means there is no time.
Yeah, agreed.
But I think subconsciously, this was going to happen anyway. I'm sitting there, I don't need a wake-up call. I'm trying to talk down something that's already in the cards. And it gets in that Presbyterian blood of my predestination,
Talked to Sonia Isaacs the other day about the idea that we think that we earned whatever we got. We earned the good things. I did this, and then we earned the bad things. So if I do good, then I'm not nothing bad's gonna happen to me. And that's some of the problems I've had in church before is the pastor. Well, if there's something wrong in your household, there's sin in your life, which, by the way, there's sin in everyone's life.
Yeah.
But we feel like getting to where you and I do when you've lost a child, I had to come to the point where I didn't earn this. I didn't earn the good things in my life, and I didn't earn the bad things. I definitely made some decisions that there were repercussions from, results from, some good, some bad. But I didn't earn everything that happened. Sometimes it just, nature over nurture or whatever. And getting at peace with that, I think helps everyone to be like, I can't do enough good to not make anything bad happen. And I can't do enough bad to not make anything good happen.
One thing you got to remember, only one apostle died a natural death. So,
Exactly.
It's we all are on a different journey. And, if you go to St. Jude's and play that card, sin in your life, when bad things happen, go see kids who are dying of cancer, and you kind of go, okay, God, explain that to me,
Right.
What's the mystery of that? But, I would say, life was great growing up, moving here. Jason probably give a better account of that. He and his brother got along great. Would they fight every now and then? Absolutely. They're 2 testosterone-filled boys.
Totally normal.
Yeah, normal. It was so funny because I remember one time they were fighting, and Jason ran his brother into the wall and the steps, and literally the wall concaved in. His frickin' nose guard over here took his brother down. He was bigger. Jason was bigger than Ryan, I think, when he was 8 or something, maybe even younger than that. But he's always kind of dominated his older brother. I said, "You're paying for that wall." And he came down with a wallet, put on whatever cash he had, and he threw the money at me and then walked out of the room. But he understood the consequences of his actions. But things were great. And with Ryan, Ryan went to Pepperdine, graduated in 4 years. Jason had a different journey. Jason went to Penn, play football at an Ivy League school, and went back his sophomore year, decided not to play. Probably partied a little bit more than he should have. And I remember he said, "Dad, I'll have more time to concentrate on studies." I went, your grades are always better in season.
Yeah.
Because you're disciplined. You got to,
they make you.
But you got to grow up somehow. And he actually says to me, he said, it's one of the best things I've done for him is I paid for 4 years of college and he wasn't done yet. And I said, "I'm done. You're on your own." And, he came back and said, "Look, give me one more chance." And Mama said, "Yeah, we're going to get one." I said, "No, this is," and then she was pushing me one way, he was pushing me, and I just finally went, I said, "Okay, this is what we'll do." I said, "I'll go back." He says, "You got to get yourself in. You got to borrow the money, do whatever you got to do." And I said, "When you give me your grades, I'll buy back your A's and B's."
That's perfect.
Okay, he tried to negotiate. He said, "What about C's?" I said, "No C's."
Hey, C's to get degrees. That's what I tell my kids.
I wasn't doing that. I was no D's and F's. I was not paying for C's. I'm paying for A's and B's.
Of course, I spent 3 years in junior college, so I mean, there's a different bar being set here.
He ended up doing it. I remember, and he graduated and never made less than a B. You know what I mean? And
it's amazing what they can do when you're paying for something.
Right, exactly. So I said, "Daggum," I tell people, good thing to. I said, especially now, the cost of college. If you don't have a plan, go do something else.
Oh, yeah.
Ryan went into Pepperdine, graduated in 4 years, and came back. And, first we thought he was going to live in California, but he missed Nashville after being in LA for 4 years. And he said, "I want to come back to Nashville." And he did, and had several different jobs in the business. And last years he was trying to manage some bands. And we got a couple of phone calls saying he was acting funny. He was acting weird. And it was kind of like some bipolar attack. And it was March 30th of 2014 is when he actually took his life. And on the 29th of Saturday, we convinced him to come over to the house, and we were visiting, and he was uber happy, super joyful, talked about, and what no one gave me instruction, just me going on the internet, was manic euphoria. Was the phrase that
the opposite of manic depression?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
Exactly the opposite of it. But he was so happy and was talking about, and he did stuff like saying how he understood what Jesus died for and what we as humans are supposed to do and the living experiences. And he was weird. He had 2 different shoes on, 2 different kind of socks on, this ugly pair of pants, a mismatched shirt. He looked like so disheveled. I said, "Why are you dressed like that?" It's my reverse peacock look. This is our tournament and our emblem for our charity
golf tournament, right? Yeah,
for Ryan. But I said, "Well, what's that mean?" He said, "Well, when a male peacock wants to get laid, he shows his colors. He flashes out in brights to attract, and it really doesn't have to do with the soul of the bird. It's He said, but humans, he says, it's about the soul. It's not about how you look out front. It's about." So I said, "So you want to look bad in order to make yourself feel good internally?" I couldn't quite get it, but he was on a path, and if he found joy in it, I went, "All right, cool." But yeah. he was explaining this, and he said, "Yeah." I said, "We went and picked flowers for our neighbor." First of all, we're in Nashville. Where do you pick flowers? It's like. He says, "What the lady think?" "Oh, she was pleased." And he said, "And then I went out the other day and saw this kid and asked him if he wanted to speak. He wanted to throw the football." And he lived on 12th South. And I was like, you see a kid walking down the street and say, "You want to go play football?" He says, "Yeah." He said, but he didn't speak any English. He only said, "No habla anglais." So he said, I spoke to him in Spanish, and we pitched the football for 2 hours.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, wow, this is, so he's leaving this carefree, joyful life. And he was explaining all this to me. And I said, would you go share this with a friend of mine? He said, like what, a psychiatrist? I said, well, like a counselor, just because whatever it is, I want you to bottle it up and give it to me. I want this kind of undescribable joy or whatever it was. He said, sure, Dad. So he had to go and he left. And so meanwhile, I'm calling my psychiatrist friend and go, hey, my son, something's wrong. There's a screw loose here. And he said, I'm too busy. I can't take any more patients. Could you at least observe him and give recommendations? He said, sure. Tell him to come by 11 o'clock on Monday. This was Saturday afternoon after he left. So on Sunday, I called and I might have called, I don't know if I called Saturday or Sunday, but I called and just said, hey, I got you an appointment. Here's the address, 11 o'clock. This guy's great. Just go chat and let's figure this thing out. Well, I left that on his voicemail, and he shot himself on Sunday. And what we think happened, the switch flipped, and he went from manic euphoria to manic depression, and just was in a dark spot. And that got revealed through stuff we'll talk about later. But that's what basically happened. He had a bad day. And was not in a good place, and I didn't even know he had a gun. So I believe in guns. I lean red on a lot of issues. I lean blue on a lot of issues. When it comes to guns, I'm very blue. And it was a sad day, and I wouldn't even think I know how to unlock a pistol if I had it in my hand right now. But
I'd love if there weren't any guns, but since other people have them, I do.
Yeah.
But I get it. Oh, by the way, that's an issue I understand both sides of. I'm like you. There's a much bigger chance of something happening with me with my gun than it is.
That's what I said. I said the odds are something negative happening with a gun in my hand versus something positive.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh, how old was Ryan?
27. My wife didn't think it was a good idea. I wanted to do a painting and call it 27 and put Ryan in a picture with
Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix.
Keep going.
There's a bunch of them, right? Amy Winehouse.
Amy Winehouse, 27. Kurt Cobain was 27. There's a couple more.
Oh, wow.
I thought I'd put him in a montage. My wife looked at me like, not going to do that.
I can see both sides of that one. I mean, it's a tough one. It's interesting, too. I mean, we'll probably get into more of that, but like this stigma that, I don't know if it was exactly preached when I was a kid in Baptist church, but like, you're going to commit suicide, you're going to hell, whatever that thing.
Correct.
I always thought, well, who had a worse day than the person that did that? I know a God with the grace that's just so much bigger and wider than that. I'm like, that doesn't jive at all with me, because that person had a really, really bad day, and God's comfort and grace are with that soul in a way that I couldn't, I would never accept that again.
The God of our understanding and God of creation would send someone to hell because they were so desperate that they'd take their life. And my son's in hell. I want to go to hell and be with him. Okay? As Christians, the life that we profess of going in the afterlife does really exist. The veil between this life and the next is really thin, that we will reunite. A lot of times we hear that, and I think we think of it in the figurative sense. Like it's a nice thing. You'll see your mom and dad again. You'll see your kid again. And do you really think you will? And I know for a fact I will. When Ryan passed, the community really rallied behind us well. One of the frustrating part was when trying to figure out the church we belonged to only sat like 250 people. And I said, there's going to be more than 250 people. We got to find a different place to do it. And I went to his alma mater high school and asked them, and they rejected it, wouldn't let the service happen there because he committed suicide, and thought that would be the ideation of that would create a follow-up And it's a tough thing to do. It's like, as soon as the type A personality that I am, it's like, I lost a son. Oh, now I got to plan a funeral, or I got to plan a service. And then you don't want to glorify what happened. But then again, too, you want to talk about the blessings that he was to your life and to the world. And you want to look at the good part of it. So it's like, God, man, it's such a fine line on how to move forward.
Christian high school, obviously.
Yeah.
Or they wouldn't have a problem?
Yeah.
It's interesting with me, Christian music. You're into that. You're very involved. I did Christian music before. Christian
church and high school, we can't love on you and your absolute most needed time that you should be taken care of. And I assume that you were probably, knowing you were very involved and probably donated and helped this school along. And your absolute worst day, we can't be there for you because of how things might look. Does that piss you off?
Yeah, and they were there, but they just didn't want a public facing of that. And they suggested a certain church that could hold the service, and I said, no, I've got it covered. So Ryan, the school had a graduation ceremonies at Brentwood Baptist. And so I went to Michael Lynn and said, hey, could I hold He said, absolutely. I said, just tell me what I owe you. He says, nothing.
And here I am giving the Baptist a hard time. That's wonderful.
Michael Lynn was fantastic, and Brentwood Baptist was fantastic. And
I just do it for fun, by the way, giving the Baptist a hard time. I know he's a great guy.
We had I think there was over 1,200 people at the service. It was a meaningful thing. And I mean, you could think, well, am I going to be able to talk? Do I want to talk? And I kind of planned it out that gave me a window. And I was telling Michael W. Smith, who was on the piano, I think at the time, I gave him a trigger to say he was doing a song. And I said, when you finish, before you cut in the next song, gave him a trigger to say, if I'm not heading up, I'm not coming. I
had the same thing, I'll tell you.
Gave me the latitude and I just I got to honor my kid. So I can't believe I held up and spoke and did it.
I had not to interrupt, but it's so similar. I had the priest. I said, I think I need to speak probably. And he goes, why don't you, because I know it seems like it now. He goes, why don't we just play it by ear? Why don't you write something out, have it typed, and I'll read it. If you feel like you want to do it, you can just decide on the fly once you get there, because people think they want to talk to them. I said, okay, that sounds good. So I wrote something up, I typed it, and I gave the priest a copy of it, and he's a great friend. And I walked in, and there's this big picture of stage. He and I went to the Grand Canyon for his 21st birthday, and it's just big, huge brown eyes he got from his mom are looking right at me. And I literally, I walked into the first row, and it's a blur and it's all that. And I mean, he looked right at me, and I could hear him go, if you got something to say, get your ass up there and say it yourself. And so we were going to wait till right before the time. And we had sat down, this is 40 minutes from happening that the priest was to me. And he looked at me, and I just pointed to me no, I'm doing this. I feel like that decision in that moment was the reason we're sitting here doing this podcast right now, which is the reason we have our dad's group that you're a part of. Because I felt like at that moment, it's like, am I going to be proactive about this? Am I going to let this hit me, or am I going to go hit it first? And as you know, there's just two ways to go about this. We could be curled up in the fetal position or
you ride the wave.
Or you could ride the wave. And we'll go out, like you say, finish your life. You have some great one-liners about that, but finish your life journey well. And I really do believe that moment, it was.
And Sage is there cheering for you.
Right. I don't know if it was euphoric, but I felt a power come on me in that moment that I feel like if I had missed that, I really would have missed something significant in this hall. Pretty grateful for that moment. It was clear as day. He was like, get up there and say what you got to say. And there's no doubt in my mind. So I love your story because I had the same.
Yeah, and then you sit there and go, every day needs to be like that. Right. And which is tough to do. It's really easy kind of get in a groove and live life. But, the whole community rallied around, and somebody took a calendar and spread out, and you signed up for a day to bring food, and so we had it for food for months. And, it's Dawn and I, and they'd bring you food for 10 people. And so we had a freezer full of stuff and all this stuff. And after about 2 weeks or something, we're looking at each other and go, we need to get out of the house. It's like,
stop eating.
Well, no, I need to see somebody other than you, I need to. So we kind of looked at our closest friends, and we call them up and say, hey, instead of you bringing food over, can we just come over and eat at your house? And Bert and Santa Stein were one of the couples, and I think we were there April 20th or April 19th.
Bert's the manager who lost his
son Adam.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because you think you're being there for your friends, and then when you kind of join that club, you really weren't, because you really couldn't, because they don't know.
I very much had that experience.
It's unbelievable. I had to call and apologize, even though I was there when Stephen Curtis lost his daughter. I went to the hospital. I saw her laying in the Vanderbilt hospital dead. And I just, you can be there for them, but you're not really there for them just because you can't suffer the same way they suffer until you go to what we go to. And so I called Steve and said, I owe you an apology. I said, I didn't show you. And they said, no, you don't owe an apology. And so.
You don't know what you don't know until you know it.
Until you know it, yeah.
Yeah.
But Bert and Santa and I were talking. Oh, the day they had lost Adam, and who had a freak. Oh, the Buffalo Bills player, the heart thing, and
yeah. DeMar Hamlin,
yeah. That same thing happened.
Basketball, right?
Basketball, running rin sprints. He just run a rin sprint, just boom, hit the deck. If there had been a defibrillator there, he might have been saved. But he passed away, and what happened was, I think a year, 6 months into it or whatever, he got a call. Bert got a call from a buddy of his in Chicago, and he says, "Look, you know me, I'm not that religious." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, we had excuse me, he had gotten married late in life. His buddy did, and they had twins." And these older couple, first time kids having a hard time, went shopping for a nanny and got a nanny. She came in at night and said, "Look, let me come at night, so I'll take care of the baby so y'all sleep." And so that sounds great. So the first night, they slept great. They woke up. The nanny goes, "Woo, y'all had a guest last night." "What do you mean we had a guest?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, he didn't wake us up." No, not that kind of guest. I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, did you have a friend who lose a son just recently, somewhere from down south or something like that?" "Oh, yeah, I did. He's basketball." He said, "Well, he came. He showed up." "What do you mean he showed up?" "Well, his spirit." And they're like kind of semi-freaked out. That wasn't in her resume.
Yeah, a little bit.
And said, they were like, he said, "Yeah." Said, "Well, okay." He said, "Yeah, he really wants to talk to his family." "Well, do they come to you?" "No, I don't do that. But there's a lady in Indiana I can turn you to." So this guy who's pretty agnostic, is calling Bert and go, "All right, you're going to think I'm nuts." But he tells the whole story. They get the number of Indiana, and somebody says, their son wants to talk to him. Boom, they got in a car and they drove to Indiana, and they had this hugely great experience there. And one of the blessed stories, I should say, is the night that we lost Ryan. Bert and Santa come over to the house, and in my tears, the first thing I said, "How fast can I get to Indiana?" How fast? And he says, he patted me on the back, says, "Well, there'll be plenty of time. There'll be plenty of time." I said, "No, it's not. I want to go now."
Yeah.
So that's the night of March 30th. We're at their house on April 19th. And he goes, we're having dinner and we're talking about different stuff. And then Bert goes like this, and he gets up, walks to his room, "I think this card's for you." And he hands me a business card. And it's Aaron, the angel reader.
Well, you don't use the word medium. It's an angel reader.
The card says, yeah.
Much more comfortable for a Baptist.
Right.
Much more comfortable. It's all what we call it.
It's all in semantics.
Right.
I call, I think it was 3:00 on a Monday. She picks up the phone in a very nervous, "Hello?" I said, "Aaron?" "Yeah." I said, "You don't know me. I've lost a son. My name is John Huey." And I said, I'm curious. And somebody said, "You could probably help me out." She goes, "I reached out for Ryan and it was eerily quiet," was the first thing she said. And I'm thinking, Aaron, the angel reader, eerily quiet. He committed suicide. Oh shit, why did I make this phone call? Mm-hmm. Why did I do this? And then I'm meanwhile dialing the phone, trying to get Dawn on the phone, because I have two phones on my desk. So she'd have speaker. We could put them on speakerphone and participate. I went to voicemail. So she said, Aaron said, "Well, the first thing she wants you to know, Ryan is bringing yellow roses, asking for forgiveness. He wants you, his mom, and his brother, Jay." Well, I didn't say he had a brother. It was Jason, but Ryan would call him J-Bo. We would all call him J-Bo as a kind of a loving expression. And brother Jay, and I said, asking for forgiveness They had a bad day, but heaven is far greater than anything you can read in a book or see in a movie. Because I always loved the after life books, and I've always explored all of that. So, so I'm thinking, well, she got the brother thing right, but yellow rose. She asked me, what's the significance of yellow roses? I said, I have no clue. She goes, well, it must be for mom. I said, well, flowers really aren't my wife's love language, but okay. And then she goes, he's got a picture of a black car. He goes, wants to know, what are you doing about the black car? And I went, oh, shit. So a couple weeks earlier, Jason and I are riding, and he's getting ready to graduate from Belmont. And one of the things Ryan, that we had, like I said, we had saw Ryan the day before he passed. And one of the things he had said was that he had met with Ford and was trying to get the Ford dealership to lease him out for an inexpensive or free a Ford Fusion. And that was going to be his vehicle that he and his client were going to ride around and go to shows with. And I said, well, why are we going to get it free? He said, well, I do GoPro ads, on the road in Ford Fusion. And he had it, and it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty aggressive. I said, well, and I always said, anything you need from me, let me know. But, so I'm like, why a Ford Fusion? And, he said, well, it looks like a Maserati, but it's under 30 grand and it burns regular gas. I went, finally, my oldest son is getting a little practical here. So I said, sounded good here. So Jason and I are riding, and I asked Jason, I said, Jason, what do you know about a Ford Fusion? And he figured out exactly where I was going. He said, I think that's a perfect car for a college graduate. So I said, well, what was your favorite color? He goes, black. I said, what was Ryan's favorite color? Black. And I thought for a second. I said, well, I hadn't talked to your mom about this yet, but if we do this, I'll do it on one condition. He said, what's that? I said, you got to share the car with your brother. While I'm on this phone call typing, the car guy I use and said, I need a black Ford Fusion ASAP. Let me know, get the best deal you can, but whatever I owe you, I'll write you a check. I think it was within 2 weeks we had a Ford Fusion. But here's Ryan pointing at a car. She's asking me. She's asking me, what's the significance of a black car?
So the black car thing all happened before you talked to her.
No. I had said, if we do this, but I hadn't done it. It was almost like, Ryan wanted a Ford Fusion. Jason said, hey, great gift for a college graduate. He wanted black. Ryan's favorite car was black, and Ryan's pointing at a picture of a black car going, what are you going to do about the black car? So it was like, I'm getting it. And the funny thing, Jason tells stories about in the early first couple of days. He said, Dad, I could feel his presence in the car. He says, when there's a song come on the radio station I didn't know he doesn't like, I would change the station. I said, well, he could probably change the station too if he wanted to.
Well, that would be a little bit.
And he's sharing this story with a couple of the friends that he'd had in the car, and they're like going, do I need to get in the back seat? Am I taking Ryan's chair?
You're on his lap.
So, and then Erin goes, another thing, she goes, well, when your wife pulls the blue blanket over her, that's Ryan hugging his mom. And we're going like, blue blanket hugging mom. And so when she reads on the back porch, when his mother reads on the back porch and she puts the blue blanket over her, that's Ryan hugging his mom. Well, we have a back porch, and my wife reads there every day. So she's not making this stuff up. So figuring out, okay, blue blanket, we go get a blue blanket out of the closet. We go take it into the reading room and all this other stuff. Well, a week later, we get a package in the mail. We open it up. It's a hand-knit blue shawl that came from our old church. Long and short of it is, and then we get on the call for about an hour, and then she... And then when I finish and I leave to go to the dinner, and I walk out in the lobby, and in the lobby, I called her at 3. She returned the call at 6. At 4 o'clock, we have a flower person and a florist that comes in and does arrangement. there was a big vase of 24 yellow roses that got delivered at 4:00. That's sitting in the office. And I buckled. I went to the ground. My knees folded. I went to the ground. And I was like, unbelievable. Even if it was bullshit, I love that kind of bullshit. Some of the concerns spiritually when people have, if you go and you live in that, try to live in that world now, you're not
going to live in this one.
Yeah, that's the kind of the negative part, I think. But to get up, so like a year goes by. Well, we started a charity tournament. This is like I said, the emblem of my golf tournament and the Peacock Invitational. And we now do a retreat for parents who've lost kids at on-site. And we do it every year, and it's packed. In fact, it's oversold. And we're doing a second one out. They just started an on-site in California.
Oh, wow.
And there's going to be 20 people. There'll be 40 people here, 50 people here, and 20 people there. So
life after loss. That's pretty amazing.
But the first 2 years, we had a relationship with an Orthodox priest. And he came. He was actually his idea is let's start a guitar project. And he said, so we got together and had a conversation. And guitars, not guns. And I bought 80 mini Taylors, and we sent them to Jordan. And we started 2 schools for music schools. I hired 2 teachers. And the whole idea was to get Jews, Christians, and Muslim kids together to write songs. And like,
I love how you're the perfect mix of conservative and liberal, all washed into one. It's refreshing to me. So, it doesn't even matter where you are. It's just I'm not being stereotyped, and that's great. It's all.
Well, I have to get instead of let's write music, let's sing songs and not shoot each other. That was the whole idea. So I told.
Not a terrible idea.
Yeah. So I told, I always said as we were working through this, I said, well, in 5 years, we'll either be on 60 Minutes or this won't will be happening, And I was on the CMA Foundation board and the CMA board for years, and they were very generous in contributing. But after the first year, analytics got to kick in. And so it was like I was given instruction on what they need to see to keep doing it. And I didn't really meet it, but they said, okay, we're giving you another check this year, but we either need to see results or you won't get one a third year, which was a nice kick in the ass. I'm kind of like, hey, as long as you're doing good, but the analytics. So I was telling this priest, I said, look, if you can't deliver the goods, he said, well, it's the Middle East, it's different. I said, well, then great. The money's going to dry up. I can't, I can only tap dance so long, and you got to see progress and you got to build on it. And then, the one good blessing too is this priest allowed Jason, gave him the opportunity to go to the island of Athos in Greece for 30 days. He went over there after Ryan's passing to kind of regroup and recalibrate and start anew. And had a wonderful experience. And one thing I'll say about the abbot there, and you can yell out, my son is here in the room, but he got called to see the abbot. As my understanding is, the abbot has been there. It's like 80-something years old, has been on this island for 60 years, and doesn't meet with quote-unquote pilgrims.
Never left the island in 60 years.
Something like that. And but doesn't communicate with the pilgrims. And us. Yeah. We're a pilgrim. Jason was a pilgrim. He's not a monk.
Yeah.
If you're not a monk, you're visiting the island, you're a pilgrim.
Okay.
And so Jason had a handler or guy responsible to kind of see him through the experience. And he said, the abbot's asked for the Tennessee Pilgrim. And so Jason goes and sees him, and the monk says, this is just to let you know that your brother had a bad day, made a mistake, but he's with Jesus in paradise. And he said, Dad, if I could push a button and have him pop back here right now, I wouldn't. Why would I? He's with Jesus.
Okay.
And as we said the other night, I'd be pushing that button. I don't care.
I'm sorry, Pop.
I don't want my son back here. I'm selfish.
If there is a button, I'm pushing it, but it does give me solace in the idea that if I were actually wise, serene, and peaceful, and connected with God like I want to be, I wouldn't push the button. I'd love to get to the day where I wouldn't push the button and bring it back. I don't know if I ever get there.
It's the shock of losing anyone. We always say you're in trauma and you're in shock on losing a child. So we said to our friend John, last week, says, you're in shock. And it's like, when my therapist told me you're in shock, I didn't get it. She says, you ever see the story of people get their leg shut off and they're looking for their leg to put it back on and they can't feel it? Yeah. And then about 10 minutes later, I said, this is it. You have about a 9-month window of we're being protected. It's out of not belief that we really lost our kid. This really didn't happen. And
I say it's like a swelling. I broke my ankle one time and it wasn't really that painful. And I was like, you're so tough, whatever. I'm like, it wasn't that bad. And then I got the surgery and it wasn't that bad. And they put a plate and 7 screws in my ankle and I think this is fine. And then the local wore off, or and it wasn't swollen anymore, and pain was unbelievable. And I think that we have a swelling of us. We had in our dad's group last week, we had a dad that was like lost his daughter a week before, and you told him you're in shock. He's like, I don't know if I'm in shock. Trust me, you're in shock. And we don't even at the time we don't know it. Now that I look back, I remember the feeling of just almost feeling like I was floating above the scene, looking at it because I was so completely not in my,
and having a hard time to wrapping their head around
that. I think I remember what happened.
Standing going around and say, we're 9 years in, we're 8 years in, and it was a little depressing. And I said, well, it's depressing, but also healthy. You'll never not miss your kid. 50 years down the line, you're going to miss your kid.
Yeah. And honestly, it's helpful to me to know that when I look at you and Mike Flynn and some of the other guys in our group, that it's been a long time. And I can say, John Phillips, my buddy, there's just a lot of guys around that 10-year spot. And I'm like, I don't need to look for something that's not there. Like, I'm not trying to get over. I don't want to get over it, for one thing. And I want to move on. I want to move forward, whatever that might mean. But it definitely, the affliction of what's happened to us has already happened. We don't want to be in this group, but we're in it regardless. So we might as well get together and share it. And to be honest, that is when the pain dissipates. That's why we're here doing this today. And this podcast will rotate in theme, as we go around. But it's really based around the idea of just being together with someone who suffers from something that you do makes that dissipate to a certain extent. Not completely, doesn't disappear, doesn't go away. But when we share it with each other, and it's in recovery.
And you're building community.
You're building community.
Like you said, John, because I knew we talked about loss, and when he said his suicide, I had to say, my son committed suicide too. And then I know he's in heaven.
I do too. I really do. What's this? I mean, when I say the stigma, I don't give a shit anymore what people's stigma is about. I'm going to talk about God and cuss on the same podcast, and if you have a huge problem with that, you're probably in the wrong spot.
Don't listen to Bono's book.
Yeah, the idea of suicide, like I said earlier, what did you struggle with that? Because obviously you weren't expecting this in any way. Because it's funny, because people could believe that in church, and if their child has a problem with depression and there's something there, they change their attitude about that.
Yeah.
It's like when we're presented with the option. Did you have any?
A little bit, but not a lot of it. And just dealing with
the school thing.
Yeah. And just trying to formalize a concept for a service to honor him without,
I don't think anyone's glorifying suicide.
Right.
I mean, I guess you could, but there was no danger of that.
Well, it's just because you don't want to promote it and think, hey, here's an option for you. That's the one thing you don't want to do. But I think he felt stonewalled down here and he thinks he can get more done up there. So his life journey was shorter.
Yeah. And if God can use everything to his glory, he can use everything to his glory. There isn't, it's not little bits, and we want to pick that out. I love how positive you are, not like positive in versus negative is one thing, but also positive as in sure of where he is. It's super helpful when we get together and we talk, your attitude towards this. And when someone's like, I'm just hoping, and you're like, no, don't worry. He's good. And your positivity, but also you're absolutely sure of what's happening. and it helps me a lot, and it helps him a lot. I know that you and Don take pieces of him with you, and you take ashes and spread them when you travel. And Michelle and I have done that a little bit, and put ashes in different places that we, went to the Grand Canyon, and then we got a place in Florida that it's very special, and we put some there, and it really helps that the way that you are, you're proactive. I'm very grateful to you for how you're doing this journey and how you help guys like me. And the Life After Loss program and On-Site, it's just amazing stuff.
Your son's still alive.
Yeah, no, I never feel better about it than there's a few of guys in there, our friend Jimmy Lee, but you're just, that's the present tense that you speak about them in. It's very here, and it keeps me from missing them so much.
Well, let me connect the dot one more further. So we're sitting there, and we do the first 2 years tournament. We have the guitar thing, and I call up Miles Adcock, who owns On-Site, and I said, "Can I meet for lunch?" And before we got started, Dave Corlew, who managed Charlie Daniels when he was still alive, he walks in, said hello and everything, and I had forgotten, because I was on the On-Site board, that they had created a program for vets, a special program for vets. And I'd gotten Charlie's charity, I connected Charlie's charity with On-Site to help fund it. And so I forgot it already happened. So I looked at Miles and I went, I forgot to ask, how did the vets program go? He said, and then Miles started getting teary-eyed. Said, it was unbelievable. Said, we did research and we created, a special program. We took our normal LCP, I always get my initials mixed up. My normal program that we do went and focused certain things that for vets, because, there's only certain things a vet can understand. And I leaned over and I said, you mean like a parent who's lost a child? And he went, that's a great idea. So instead of Ryan's Garden, I already told him about the garden that we'd pay at the garden. He said, instead of Ryan's Garden, we'll start Ryan's Grove. And we'll do a retreat for parents with lost kids, and then we'll plant trees in the honor of the kids who died. And I said, Miles, you have no idea. I said, what? There's no tombstone for Ryan. We planted a dogwood tree with half his ashes. And our idea is to, on his anniversary, is plant trees in his honor with his ashes. So we're in on that. I said, looked at the calendar. I said, the program was at that time was Friday to Friday. I said, is March 23 to 2:30 open? That was 23 through 30 was a Friday to Friday. He said, yeah. I said, and this is in October. I said, that's our week. And 30 was Ryan's anniversary, fourth year of his passing. And it was Good Friday. So that's how we kicked off the Life After Loss program. So this will be our 8th year, I think, of doing it. So it's been a blessing, and the different people. I think 3 years ago, there's an African-American couple who, the opening, Dawn and I, we both went through the program the first year, and 2 years ago, Dawn went again. She says, I really feel compelled to go again. I said, are you okay if I don't? Because I don't feel compelled to go. She goes, absolutely not. I'd rather go with a girlfriend who's Val, a friend who lost her son. I said, great, go do that. Y'all go there. But she and I have both had gone to the opening ceremony and the closing ceremony of each year. So just to see and introduce and tell the people why we did it, and then go celebrate their experience. And so I remember, and this happened more than once, but I remember this black couple, and you go around and introduce yourself, and you introduce your child in the first person. We believe your child is with us in this room. And the lady was talking about, and the husband was talking about how he was there for his wife. And the wife had her arm around her husband, and she's pointing at him like, no, this is about him. Like he's doing that manhood thing, and she's pointing like this, like that. So I went up, you know, at the closing. I just went up, hey, how was your week? Knowing that I didn't have any other further conversations about that. He turned around, gave me this huge bear hug and said, "You saved my life." You know,
that's awesome.
Usually we get at least one of those a year.
Interesting to me always the manhood thing. We don't talk about it. Come on, get out of here with that shit.
Right.
The manly thing to do is do the uncomfortable part. Sit down, talk about it, cry, be a man.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'll just hole up in my basement chair with a bottle of Jack Daniels. That would be my easy way. That's not the tough way.
That's the unmanly thing.
We gotta drop that. But we've been somehow it's been ingrained to like my father's a great guy, but his generation, they didn't talk about anything.
Right.
They didn't have the things that we have, and it's ridiculous.
I can't live without some sort of device in my hand or the TV on or something like that. But, you know, if you could shut all that down and meditate and pray and live in solitude, you're going to get a lot closer to.
Yeah, it thins the veil. I noticed that the more of that crap going on, the thicker the veil gets, and the more I'm like, wait, I'm worked up. I wasn't even concerned about this before. I want to wipe it off the table and get back to this. Then there is a simplicity thing. I don't know if I'd want to start my career with this perspective, but I do not need as much.
Right.
I need the idea of like less, and I don't just mean like less things or less money. I mean like less distraction from just being me. I sit there, the TV on in the background. I don't need that anymore.
Right.
I like to walk in silence. I'll go hike and just like nothing. It's it's a beautiful thing. And you're, we get to learn from each other. You're the way you do the things that you do. It's inspiring to other people, and you've helped a lot of people. But this experience is probably helping you go, oh, I can have no phone in my hand and no TV on or whatever, because that's, to me, when I get close to my son is when there's some peace and silence. And
you keep saying of what I've done and what I've done, like your short journey in this between what you and your wife have gone through and how you've given back to the community and started this fellowship with men and women, moms and dads, is I think remarkable. That sped your journey up quicker. Your healing has been sped up by that.
No doubt.
And it's so funny because one thing you share when you go around and, you hear the stories of how people, who they've lost and what they've lost. And, there was a couple last year who came and, they lost their 2 kids and their parents died in a car. Their parents. So grandma and grandpa had their 2 kids, and the 4 of them died in a car wreck. So you not only, you just go, oh my God, or
well,
yeah. And I give glory to the fact that Ryan didn't, all these mass shootings. He wouldn't imagine having to live with if your kid kills someone else, And I just,
you remember the guy in our group that's lost 2 children 6 weeks apart.
Yeah.
Remember that a few months ago, he came in and we're like, oh my gosh.
And both killed.
Yeah, both were killed.
Both killed. In
both
2 separate incidents. Yeah. Both were murdered. And you just go, oh my God, I'm a blessed man.
Yeah, no, I mean it is. This perspective is an amazing thing, and if we believe what we believe, I always say that. We can. That's why I love your proactive assurance and whatever. And then somebody else will give. The group is just full. It's a very, very diverse group of people with one thing in common, and that one thing in common isn't really just the loss of the kid. It's the hope that, we kind of hand to each other, and I borrow a little bit of yours and you borrow a little bit of somebody else's, and we all, for some reason, at the potluck dinner of what we bring into this, we all seem to leave with more than we came from.
Christy Cookies. Chris, when he lost a kid he lost his son on a motorcycle accident, and it was before Ryan passed. And he came to the service for Ryan, and he was, when I get the receiving line before the services, he was the one guy that gave something unique that resonated with me. I mean, it's interesting because you go through 1,000 people and they, sorry for your loss, sorry for your loss, sorry for your loss. I walked away going, I got to come up with something better than that. And so I'm sorry was a word I've tried to avoid using when someone experienced loss. I try to come up with something that's unique to that situation. But Chris calls up and gives me this big, huge hug. And he said, bro, what? Put on your seatbelt for a roller coaster, spiritual roller coaster of your life.
And find other people that are in your shoes, because I can't imagine not having you and my other brothers in this room. I can't imagine not having some of the couples, some of the women for my wife. Like, find those people. If there's 2 or 3, whatever it is, I don't care what you got to do. I think there's a lot of healing in it. And
well, I got my son here. I'm going to talk about the siblings of people who lost kids.
Yeah, we're gonna have a sibling show on this podcast. We're still establishing what we're.
You think anything else I left out or anything? Yeah, 9 years and we're still hanging.
It's so nice to think of him still as a person, And talking about him shooting himself, him struggling. I got a text from him the day before he shot himself saying, because I was the one seeing his Facebook posts and they were really all over the place and super positive and a little ranty. And I was like, hey, Ryan, what's going on? Like, how are you doing? And
I don't follow any of that stuff.
Yeah, I knew something was up. And the last text I got from him was, he even made a joke in the last text he ever sent me. It was he was doing a play of a Backstreet Boys lyric that was, I want to hear you say, like, everything's okay. But he did, like, the parentheses and filled out the Backstreet Boys lyric. I forget it because I don't know the song. And I text him back, like, love you. I think you're good. I think we got to talk to some people about what's going on. And that text showed up green. And he's got an iPhone, so it was blue. And I was like, oh, I was needing something like this because I felt this buildup where you don't let it out for a while. You're like, fuck, I need someone to poke me here and let my guts out,
yes.
And it's nice to do it around people that have experienced the same shit. And I'm thankful you guys are doing this. This is great. I think more people need to talk about it because that manly thing and holding it inside and
the responses from the people, like, holy shit, I lost my brother 9 years ago and I've never talked to anyone about it. Or we lost 2, whatever it is, all those things. When they hit us, it's not like, oh, I enjoyed your podcast. It's like the responses we get, and I'm like, man, there's a hole in the world for this. Forget business and whatever's going on. There's a hole in the world for this. And it doesn't fix it, but man, it addresses it at least.
Yeah.
That hole is somewhat filled in with God instead of like all the other shit we want to put it with. For me, it could be TV and.
It comes in waves. And it takes turns. It's your wife one day, then come in crying, what's going on, and come in, you be crying, and you don't. Remember, we used to try to fix it, like, all right, well, how can I make you stop crying? No, let them cry as much as they want, just be there for them. Gotta ride the wave. You gotta ride the wave, because people fight the wave, and if you fight the wave, you never get to shore. If you ride the wave, that wave will take you to shore, and you really see it's there and take it in. But I was just going to say, back to Amy Grant, who's been a client of mine for 38 years. She came over and first of all, she said, the day of your service is I want that to be my meal day. And I went, anything you say, Amy, you can have, and the day she cooked a roast and salmon and vegetables and wine and a meal for 50 people that she cooked. She didn't order from a caterer or for, it's probably what I would have done, and she drove it to my house by herself. And she said, "Can you mind helping me get the food out of the car?" And I go in, there's this huge sand, all this food. And earlier when she came and sat with me on the porch, and just being present, I'm just saying that if you've got any people I had a really close friend, and really we don't have much of a relationship now. He's a really strong Christian who just didn't show up, didn't call, didn't write, and said he was giving me my space. I said, "I don't want space. You got to run to these people. You got to run to these people." And I said, Amy sat there and we didn't talk probably for an hour. We just sat on the porch. And I hope this sounds the way I feel it, is that, Ryan trying to be in the business and not hitting his stride. And not to say that I had the perfect, like I said, I started off my thing at 9 years old. I knew I wanted to be behind the scene, and, I had a pretty good career. And so I didn't know if he was just one day he woke up tired, or I do believe there was a chemical imbalance that happened that day, from the manic euphoric to the manic depression. There was a biological thing involved. And when he had an autopsy, he had no drugs in his system. So, there was a huge mental capacity component of this deal. So, but I asked Amy, and I asked her, "Do you think it's ever tough with your kids that you're Amy Grant?" And she looked and she started weeping, and just said, "Every day,
It's a different kind of tough, but I can tell you this from the amount of therapy that I've done, which is not a ton, but it's got it, that Ryan did not die from you being successful. And we have to learn to give ourselves we dig in hard to find where we were responsible for this. And the truth is, in our situation with our son, we did a lot. We did the best I could. I was sober for a lot of years based on that. And I used to have a thing. My kid is kind of like you did with your charities. My kid's not dying from drugs and alcohol. I'm going to beat this thing up every day of my life. I'm going to get up every day. It's one day at a time, but it's every day. I'm going to beat this thing up, and that's not how my son's going to die. And the truth is, I didn't have control of that.
Right.
That was not up to me. And I don't think God was going, "I'm going to show you this." God shows me what I need, the time I need it, and I'm going to trust him that he'll show me the next thing when I need to do that. And maybe that's on the other side of this.
Yeah. It's kind of struggle. Sometimes you hear these kids that come out and they want to be successful. They want to be a better dad. "I'm going to be a great dad because my dad sucked." All this negative stuff. I'm going to rise above it. So it gives them a certain energy to surpass what it is. Heck, who knows? Just be who you are.
And what kid doesn't have some issue with their parent? I mean, it just is. And believe me, I already am like, I can almost give my kids' therapist a list of things. Here's what they're going to talk about. We're going to, but nobody loves those children more than we do.
Yeah.
We can't, and that's what the thing we have in our group is that we don't have to explain to someone how much we miss our kid or how much we love our kid, because everyone knows.
And we don't look at the guy next to us and feel shame.
No.
Yeah.
Regardless of the event, the reason that they're gone, the length of time, there is no. It's amazing to me the similarities between someone who lost a young child and a 80-year-old who lost a 60-year-old. The order of a parent losing a child is just not the right order.
Right.
And there's something very relatable about.
And it doesn't seem to change to me whether somebody died of suicide or someone died of OD'd or someone died of cancer. Losing a child is losing a child.
Losing a child. And we have a friend in our group that's daughter died in the emergency room of this disease that she'd kind of had her whole life. And he found ways to be guilty about that he didn't demand the new staff because he knew they weren't doing the right job and all these things. We can find the guilt if we want it, and we can find the grace if we want it.
Right. Well, again, you guys, I think it's amazing what you guys have done for the cause and for yourself.
But I was going to say, we probably definitely get more out of it than we could ever put out.
When anybody ever says lines like that, I got more out of it, you always go, BS, but it's true.
It's totally true. I'm way too selfish to do anything for someone else that didn't make me feel good.
Well, I do feel it's so funny. In our men's group, some guys will go in a different way, and I don't know, but I can look at this man and know he and I are on the same page.
I feel like we're patting him into positivity. You know what I mean? Don't get too far out there.
Just interesting to just see how our faith walk has gotten stronger, but it's different.
Like the width of the road is the biggest thing to me. There's so much. The road is so much wider and more peaceful and beautiful and all that. Then I was, oh man, if we don't do that, are you going to hell? I don't even believe in that anymore. I think we can act our way into hell. I think we got to go in and lock the door on ourselves if we want to do that.
You think about it. It's like, what do we call the New Testament? It's called the good news.
Yeah.
It's good news. It's not like, here, sign your name here and join the club or you're going to hell. It's like, if you embrace this good news, joy will be more present in your life. You will live the life you were created to live better. The more, when Jesus said, he didn't say worship me. Show me in the Bible where it says Jesus said worship me. Jesus said follow me.
Mm-hmm.
So if we live like he lived, we're going to be happier people. You know?
I think the gospel's for here, the earth journey.
And when we end our earth journey, it's going, so how'd you do?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and who's going to judge? You're going to judge yourself. And Ryan sit there and said, I'm going to get more done up here than I did down there. And he said, you finish your earth journey well. They're off on, our kids are off on a new adventure, doing cool shit. And they want us to do cool shit.
Yeah, yes.
And not mope and, you know, be miserable. So, and be blessed by the time we had. And look forward to when we reunite.
Yeah, you're a troubadour in this journey. I'm telling you, John. This the first. Funny when we will end here, man. But when Sage passed, you know, it's kind of a blur, or whatever. And I hadn't heard from you. I didn't think about it, but I heard about life after the loss. I'm like, oh, I need to text John. So I texted you, and I texted it was me, and you're like, I just thought you weren't texting me back because you had my old number from way back in the day. And I was like, it was just like the perfect timing. The way that you talked about it and whatever, it kind of, man, it changed my trajectory in this. And it's helpful. If I can do that for one other person and that ripple can keep going, man, it's just going to be, a better life.
More than one.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you.
Yeah.